Boom! Blessings and much love and shout out to everybody joining us on our Facebooks, as on our YouTube channel, that is Ancient Biblical Spirituality, as well as on our Facebook community. On my Facebook page, Zane Pierre, Ancient Biblical Pneumatologist, and we are also streaming live within our community, our Facebook community, that is Anointed Life Mentorship International. All right. Tonight, we're actually taking a break. Well, not really a break, but we actually decided that we want to actually just, take a little, slow down a little bit and speak about mental health in the context of mental health for men in the world today. All right, just let me share this within our community. Let them know that we are here. There we go. All right, if you're joining us, wherever you're joining us from, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section. Let us know where you're coming from, where you are. Sorry, who you are and where you're coming from. Let everybody know that we are here. All right, let me just share that here. And boom. Good. Notification has gone out. So today we actually decided that we want to come on and speak a little bit along the lines of men's mental health. One of the things in particular that is actually very prominent in the world today, and especially across the world of social media, is the presence of the necessity for intervention regarding mental health. Right? And mental health in particular is not something that is obviously it is not gender specific. It is specific to both male and female. But recently I've been looking into the statistics with regards to mental health. And what we realize is actually the statistics of, or the mortality rate with regards to, I don't think I am allowed to use that word on social media, but the mortality rate or the statistics with regards to men actually unaliving themselves, I think that's what we use on social media, is 4 times the rate of, literally 4 times the rate of the unaliving rate for women. And this, of course, in particular, is therefore something that is serious and is something that I think we all need to take into consideration, and we also need to address and not just look over it. So tonight, just today in particular, I've been looking at some content with regards to men's mental health, and I felt that it may be useful for us to actually begin to look into the areas of men's mental health and even to speak on that area, to be able to help men who actually fall within our community, men within our social media community and so on, to be able to have some sort of support as well as encouragement. Not only support, but also encouragement for progression and for managing what many may consider struggles, challenges, and also many who may be in a space where they are feeling as though it is dark. Right now, this is the first time that I'm actually speaking specifically on the topic of mental health, and specifically towards men. And I think that it is something in particular that we are, as a society, we usually begin to see things as a problem only when it gets to a point of serious decadence. And I don't think that, I also think that mental health is actually one of the things that we are actually not taking seriously within the society. And because of the apparent gender wars that's actually taking place, what is taking place is that amongst, well, between the genders, what is taking place is that there's a battle to really identify whose mental health is more important than the other. And this definitely is not going to be a productive endeavor, and it is also something that is going to lead to more destruction. Right? So if you're joining us with regards to, let me just make sure here that we are here. Nice. So I thought long and hard as to how I'd start this live, how I'd actually start this live with regards to mental health. For those of you actually now joining in, please feel free to comment and let us know where you're coming in from. Right? Post your name as well as where you're coming in from, where you're watching me from. I thought long and hard as to how I should really approach this particular topic. Shout out to Holy Brother Donald Davis. Blessings and much love, bro. Blessings and much love, Holy Brother. Coming in from Miami. All right. It's been a while. I trust that all is well, bro. So, as I was saying, I thought long and hard about how I should start this live after looking at the content that I was looking at regarding mental health in general, right? For work. All right, all right. Nicely, nicely. um, and after going through some of the content today, there are also a couple songs that's actually done by now he's become a very well known artist. His name is Dax, and he did a particular song called "To Be a Man," and that song was remixed twice. One with a well known country singer, and then there was a mega remix where the artist Dax, he invited apparently those persons who duetted the song on TikTok and on social media. He invited them to come in and actually create a mega remix. And in going through these songs, one of the things in particular that I really was impacted by is how on point and how real the song is. If you know the song, please feel free to comment in the comment section. Let us know if you know that song. It's called "To Be a Man," right? Whether you've heard the original version, the remix, or the mega remix, let us know in the comment section as well. Now, I was really taken aback as to how accurate the song is. We, in the Rebooting Biblical Perspective podcast, we did a reaction video. That's actually the host. That's Holy Sister Courtney King, and Holy Sister Tony Woodkey. The three of us, we did a reaction video to this video, to the original video, and it was very, let's say, sobering to see how, for the first time, probably the first time in my life have I actually come across music that really address issues of men, right? And the mental health of men, or the mental state of men. And it was really uncanny how the song in particular began to identify what most men live with. And in hearing the song, one of the things it did was really remind me of my biological father, and how he was one of those persons in particular. Listening to the song, it took me. It pretty much. I can't even say that it happened once. It happened a few times. That once listening to this song, I really actually had a nostalgic moment where I went back to memories that that I had of my father, and how he managed that. Now, of course, in his era, nobody was actually speaking about that. Now it's something that has actually become more prominent. And unfortunately, it's become more prominent in a time where there is this whole redefinition. Because this is what we're really facing here, a redefinition of gender roles. And it's also come at a time where there's an apparent war between genders. And so right now, the mental health of men, statistically, they said that it's actually, when it comes to the rate of, let's say, I don't know if I can say that word on social media and not be blocked or warned or anything like that, but the rate of being unalived, um, or unaliving oneself, I hope I have I hope I have the terminology correct, is at a staggering 4 times higher than the rate of unaliving oneself for women, which means this is actually something that was also mentioned in the song. This is also something that is also very prominent on social media. And so naturally, this is something that I thought it was necessary for me for me to stop. I said this at the beginning here, but I'm just giving a little more details here as to what really prompted me to post this live today. Yeah, and this is something in particular. In listening to the lyrics, yeah, I totally believe that this is actually what's taking place, because the lyrics in particular was very accurate with regards to the experience of most men. So I decided to do this live today to really speak on it and to share a little bit of where I came from with regards to what most people would call mental health. When I experienced my taste of mental health issues, I didn't really see it as mental health at the time. I saw it as an identity crisis. Only when the term was really pretty much framed by psychology today did I actually understand, well, that is actually what they were speaking about, mental health issues. So today, what I want to really do is speak a little bit on where I came from, the mental health issues that I faced, um, what were the effects of that, and what were some of the spiritual keys, mental keys, as well as physical keys that I encountered that actually has set me free of that. Today, I could say, let's say almost 9 to 10 years later, I do not have any struggles with mental health. Now, if I actually go back, not trying to revisit my entire life here, but the first thing I could actually say is that most of our research at the International Institute of Pneumatology, we know is biblical research, but a great deal of the research actually revealed that the biblical conundrum that is actually addressed in the Garden of Eden in the lens of the ancient Israelites, for the ancient Israelite priests, prophets, the apostles, Yeshua, it is unfortunately not known that most of the content in the Bible really address health holistically. And when I say health holistically, we're actually speaking about spiritual health, mental health, which is almost one and the same, and physical health. Now, before in particular, so let me just explain what the context of mental health is in the Bible. Whilst most of the psychology today are actually speaking about mental health from the context of a man really finding himself in a space where he is unable to express himself and being shamed in some form of fashion or guilted in some form of fashion for anything that he expresses. The ancient interpretation of biblical literature, this is independent of the typical modern Christian view of the Bible. The ancient Israelites actually, their perspective of the Garden of Eden and what took place in the Garden of Eden gives insight as to what we call mental health issues today. It's simply that the Bible, when it was translated, it actually uses terms, a particular terminology that would cause the average reader that doesn't actually know anything about the interpretation of the text or anything about the ancient Israelites. It's very easy for the average reader to overlook the content and to treat it like a book of rules and laws and legislations. And that's because we have never been taught in the Western Christian world what was the mindset or the school of thought that the authors came from. And what we did was impose our perspective of what the translators call commandments and promises. We interpreted it through the lens of our legal system, our justice system. And so to many, when they read the scriptures, what they're really reading is rules, right? Rules of validation before God. Rules that you need to keep to feel approved before the God of the Bible. And unknowingly, this has actually been a travesty and a massive misinterpretation of what the text is and what the purpose of the text is as well. For those of you who may be hearing this for the first time, the scriptures in particular was never meant to be a list of rules of validation for anyone or a list of rules of approval before God. It is a little bit beyond, or should I say, if you really think about it, why would God need you to prove yourself in the first place if He is all knowing? Why is He trying to get you to approve yourself? What has been overlooked is that the literature in particular was never meant to be rules. It was meant to be a covenant of wisdom. This is actually clearly written in Deuteronomy chapter 4, that the Torah was supposed to be the wisdom of Israel. And when I say wisdom of Israel covenant required that they take God's name as their own and that they memorize the covenant as the wisdom of the title that they take on as their own. This title was actually called Yahweh. Now, their interpretation of the text indicates that man was meant to live self-existently, which is self-determiningly. That means that man was actually supposed to be provided with definitions for his identity and definitions for everything that he's interfacing with, so that the definitions would educate one on what everything was and what was its purpose, or what was the end result of the thing that was created. That meant that with definitions, one will be able to understand what they're interfacing with. Right? It's the definitions in particular, even the Garden of Eden starts with defining God's name in its first mention. when God gives his name to Moses, he also defines the name. And so the name pretty much tells you what the identity is. It defines the identity, and it tells the carrier of that title what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to see and understand the creation and understand everything that is around them. The name and the definition of that name give them that information. The narrative actually indicates that there was a conversation between the serpent and the Adam. And what they were tricked into was actually, instead of using their own definitions, their own name, the spirit, and the definition of that name as their wisdom, they were tricked into using something external of them as a source of wisdom. And the ancient Israelites, the priests, the prophets, the apostles, they themselves actually look towards this narrative and communicate that all mental health issues is as a result of the external pursuit of validation. Right? The purpose of the scriptures is actually to identify that the conundrum of man that Moses calls sin is in fact the external pursuit of approval, and the fruit or the results of the external pursuit of approval. That results, which is what he calls sin. And where there's external pursuit of approval, the external pursuit of approval is being used as a source of life, literally as a source of life. And so when one is pursuing external things, they are therefore pursuing their source of pursuing life. And the desperation to have life results in crimes, anger, rage, depression, and so on. When one acquires the source of validation, they feel they have a sense of pride, arrogance, and condescension to others, which, by the way, is what psychology calls today narcissism. And for those who do not receive the source of validation, or they're lacking it, they fall into what psychology would call mental health issues, which is usually a form of depression and everything that they're really speaking about regarding mental health. Now, narcissism actually falls under the category of mental health as well. But once you're in the pursuit of external validation, the texts in particular teach that this is the root cause of all validation. Sorry, the root cause of all mental health issues, or rather, the root cause of all mental health issues is the pursuit of external validation. Does that make sense, everybody? Now, if we look at, so now that I've explained that, let me just give some insight as to where I came from. Now, I came from a religious background, and I actually grew up in a family that was predominantly, the family in general, on a large scale, they were the people who were really focused on academic accomplishment. Right? Academic accomplishment as a source of validation. Right? Where there's academic accomplishment, and simultaneously there was a kind of a balancing act behind using academic accomplishment and then validating yourself by your spirituality, or validating your spirituality by doing certain things as well. Now, I, in particular, was one of those that really wanted to experience what I was being taught in church, or what I read in the Bible. And that led me to pursue externally, through the list of things that I was told that I need to do. It led me to pursue a source of validation to be able to be deemed righteous or worthy before God, to be the conduit that the denomination of Christianity taught. Now, in addition to this, I also came from this family that was actually academically driven, and so one was usually validated by the family, either criticized or praised based on their academic accomplishments. And I came from a home where I saw my father, who wasn't able to actually complete his entire education through the system. And so even though he was a very well-read person, he compensated for that by being very well-read. He was actually treated by other family that saw themselves as more academically accomplished. They actually diminished him or treated him as though he was lesser than them by measurement by measuring by the measurement of academic accomplishment. Now, this in particular was predominantly where I came from, right? And then after a while, when I actually began to step into the working world, then it moved from academic accomplishment to, depending on which parent I was dealing with, one parent, which was my father's side of the family, they were dealing with academic accomplishments. My mother's side of the family, they were dealing with both academic accomplishments as well as the career, right? Validating you or your value by not career, but the job that you found, if you had a good job. Now, these things in particular throughout my teens, throughout my childhood, teens and 20s, were very, very, very heavy weights. Right? I felt as though it was always, it was never, and it was there was never any rest. Right? If one was not being approved or disapproved by their spirituality, and the approval of the spirituality was determined by how much you prayed, and designed to be loved or valued by another. By what I mean is by being valued by others. So the in society, generally in society, you would say that a man, because of the tradition, is valued by women or valued by the familial structure. I shouldn't even say the familial structure because it depends on where you come from as well. We know for a long time, men were taught that they had to provide and protect, and the provision and the protection was basically outside validation. Right? That's a question. Outside validation. All right. Okay, so let me just explain here a little bit, right? When we say, when I'm actually speaking about being valued by academic accomplishments and so on, this is actually what was used to determine your value in the group or in the circle, right? So the more academic accomplishments that you had, or the better career, not sure, I shouldn't say career, the better job that you had, you were treated as though you were to be respected, right? And that means that you were treated as though you were you were praised. You were treated as though you are doing something. You are valued. Does that make sense? And that meant also that exactly. If you don't make a large income, you're valued less than others. Right? In my family, my father's side of the family, they use academic accomplishments to do that. So the more academic accomplishment that you have, degrees and so on, you were valued more than everybody else, than you're respected. They spoke to you differently. They spoke to you as though you deserve respect. Whilst those who didn't were treated as though you are nothing and you should be treated as nothing. On my mom's side of the family, it was academic accomplishment and the job that you have. If the job paid you a lot, then you were valued more than others. And when I actually stepped into the working world, it moved from academic accomplishments to the job that you have. Is the job that you have paying you a lump sum of this big amount of money, and you were treated as though you were more valued than others, right? And that became when that happens. Then what that happens, as you know, it puts one in a space where you never rest, because when these persons come around, you know that you're actually going to come under scrutiny. They are going to speak to you according to your level of value based on their determination of, okay, do you have this big job, and what about your academic accomplishments? So if you had multiple degrees, you were valued more than others. And naturally, that also meant that whether if you had academic accomplishments and you had a good job, you were seen as a good provider, somebody that can provide. And if you didn't have these things, you were seen as somebody who is not to be respected, or you didn't get a respect. You were spoken down to, and you were spoken about as though you have no worth to anyone. Does that make sense, everybody? Right. So that was basically the atmosphere that I came from. Right. And then the parents, in particular, and the immediate family, they validated your spirituality by whether you were praying enough or how much they saw you dedicating yourself in prayer and reading the Bible. So even the spirituality had a criteria of whether you were valued as somebody who was spiritual or somebody who's not spiritual. And if you were spiritual, then you were applauded. And if you weren't spiritual, then you were treated as though you're a backslider and you need to do more. Now, these things in particular, lots of judgment. Yeah, you can put it like that. Right? And I personally, when it comes to the spiritual aspect, it was it's spiritual, academic accomplishments, and the job that you had. It became naturally you have a certain amount of pressure that comes with that. And for me in particular, I actually grew up wanting to have the kind of relationships that I saw that God had with man, with Moses and these guys. So in my teenage years, one of the things that I did in an attempt to, again, see myself as valued before God himself, coming up in that kind of circle, it became very easy to think, well, you need to actually meet a particular criteria for God to have a relationship with you, or for God to interface with you one-on-one. And from that perspective, in my teenage years, I saw in the Bible how everybody had this visitation from God. And in the Pentecostal church at that time, I also was constantly hearing about visitation from God, that God would visit you. There's this constant bombardment of talk about visitation. And so, naturally, because of the constant bombardment, I began to think, well, you're not valued by God unless you get visitation. And you're not valued by the community of Christians unless you get a visitation. So there was judgment there also, right? If just around the elder, just by the elders alone, the elders actually judged you as spiritual or carnal, and being carnal was actually something that was not understood for what it is. It was actually used as a system of judgment, right? And so if you were carnal, you were told that you are going to hell, and so you will look down, right? Visitation requires prior separation. They didn't teach really how to get it done. They would just applaud those who would like go on 40-day fasts and persons who dedicate themselves to things like that to a period of time. They were treated as though they were special, and they were to be respected. And those persons in particular, you listen to them. You don't have an opinion. You listen to them, right? And now in all of this, one of the things that I noticed was how my father, I'm on a 3 day, right? Right. Um, Amongst all of this, I also noticed how my father actually dealt with this system of judgment. So he wasn't able to finish his education, but as I said, he compensated for that by being very well read. And because other family members went to university and they had degrees, even in normal in family gatherings, they would make it a point to try to diminish his perspectives. And even though he had data that was accurate, they would actually move away from the data and criticize his lack of education in an attempt to tell him that he is not qualified to even have that conversation. And I saw how that, and because academic accomplishment, um, and having a good job, which is providing and protect, falls in the category of providing and protecting, those were the qualifications to be able to provide and protect. I saw how the bombardment by the family and the lack of respect, it was very disrespectful, done in a very disrespectful manner. Yeah. And so I saw how he dealt with that. And he was always very quiet and reserved in that area. But when in observing that now as a man, I can better understand what I saw, his demeanor. When I was a child, it looked as though he was just reserved and away from everybody. But now as a man, I know what he was dealing with was dealing with the sense of criticism and the lack of value that he was treated with. And I knew it to an extent, but now because of our research at the institute, I knew it to a depth that I could not have known before this research at the institute. I just knew that he was isolated, and you could tell that the lack of value that was shown to him by family members because of not being judged by them as being a good provider, and not being academically accomplished was something that caused them to treat him as though he was not worthy, and also not worthy of being called a man. Right? I saw that, and when I heard that song by Dax, it just boom. It just carried me right back to the moments that I actually observed him. And now I could understand the depth of what he experienced a lot more than when I was a child or when I was in my teens, not having the knowledge that I have now. Now, at age 25, my father passed. And I saw how the same people, again, that dark song, speaks so much truth, because I saw how the same people that diminished him treated him as though he was not worthy of being called a man by their system of judgment. I saw how when he passed, all of a sudden everybody was crying as though, and then you hear it was like, he was such a good man. But you didn't hear that when he was alive. And I remember when I saw the same people talking about that, the same people that criticized him, the same people that technically was destroying his ego. I saw the same persons come and say that he was a good man. And I thought to myself, what level of hypocrisy. It was in that moment that I really began to see the beginning of what this construct is for men looks like. And so when my father passed, I actually had to step up as the firstborn of the family. I had to step up and take the reins. And then, stepping up and taking the reins, I began to interface with that directly. Now, I was the one subject to the criticism. I was the one subject to the judgment. I was the one that was looked at in the same with the same eyes of judgment. I had the first-hand experience there now. And I remember when my father passed, because my father and I were close in our communication and so on. I remember when my father passed that I actually stood up outside of the house one day, and I reasoned to myself that I needed some sort of reference point to be able to know when this was present. I needed a reference point to know how to determine what was a good decision from a bad decision, what decisions to make and what decisions not to make. And at age 25 is when I actually decided I needed to, if the Bible was really the word of God, then I needed to understand the Bible a lot more than I did, to be able to actually find a compass to be able to understand what to do and what not to do. When I started at age 25, I started my own journey of spirituality when I was age 17. My father passed at age 25. And at age 25, Papa, is when I really began to dedicate myself to really understanding, or trying to understand as best as possible, because I really have to say trying to understand the context of the Bible and how these principles are supposed to be applied. And that actually pretty much compounded a decision that I made around age 17 to seek this visitation from God, right? To qualify myself to seek this visitation. And what did I do? From age 17, what I did is I actually went through the Bible. Again, you're pursuing your validation, you're pursuing your worth, right? From age 17, at age 17, I literally went into the Bible and I took out everybody that I saw God interacted with. I made a mental list of everybody that God interacted with. And I researched every one of these characters. And everything they learned, I put on a list to learn. Whatever they did, I went and I found out how I could do the same. Because in my teenage mind, I thought to myself, with these men probably striving for perfection, so I should strive for perfection. And so I went building an identity to be approved by God. And when I saw this with my father in particular, because my father was also very dedicated to the Bible, very, very, very dedicated to the Bible. He didn't really understand it in the way that we understand it now, but very dedicated to the Bible. And so when I stepped into the reins of actually having to be the breadwinner for the family, I was already around that path of trying to understand. But when he passed, then it really registered that I needed to buckle down to really understand the Bible to know how to make decisions. And believe it or not, that helped to be able to deal with judgment. Because what I did was I actually began to use what the scriptural principles were to know what decisions to make and what decisions not to make. Now, I lacked a lot of knowledge in comparison to where we are now after the research, after 9 years of research and experimentation at the Institute. So the biblical knowledge actually helped me make decisions that would impact my immediate family and me. But the familial pressure, societal pressure to meet these criteria, and to be a better provider did not stop. It did not stop until the research at the Institute began. And the research at the Institute began because I was propelled into a crisis of myself, where I took a trip to Colombia, in Bogota, Colombia, in Latin America. And for the first time, I encountered a church where supernatural things were taking place. It took place right in front of me. And I spiraled, technically, began to spiral out of control mentally, because for all of my life, I'd been seeking this visitation. And here are these young people, teenagers, and miracles are happening all around. They don't know what I know. They don't know what I studied. And they had no knowledge of what I knew, but they had all the manifestation that I was looking for. And that caused me to spiral into an identity crisis. That's what people would actually call right now a mental health crisis. I felt like as though I was in the water, in the middle of the ocean, and there was no branches. Had nowhere to turn, no one to look to for answers. And even if I wanted to ask for answers, coming up and seeing the invalidation that came from the society, family members. And another thing is, I witnessed the invalidation that came from women in the family, the invalidation towards men, the constant judgment that pretty much assume the authority to validate you as whether you are valuable as a man or not. And so there was nowhere for me to turn. No one for me to turn to. That was a crisis dealt with in a personal space, with absolutely nobody to turn to, because the ladies in the family were judgmental. So if you speak about that, then that's most likely going to be weaponized. And the men in particular, they were on their pursuit of trying to show themselves to be good providers. And so to go to them, that would be seen as weakness. You are wasting time with your issue. So there was nowhere for me to turn. And so what did I do? I literally isolated. And I came from a profession that taught me one very important principle that is responsible for the approach that I took to mental health, to this mental health, what people would call mental health crisis today. As I said, I saw it as an identity crisis. But I saw one principle that I was taught that was responsible for me being able to take it by the horns and to begin to pursue and invest time and effort into getting answers. And that was, I lectured and trained people within the occupation of the offshore health and safety environment, where I would give you, we would train, we would sit you in a classroom and carry on a lecture that actually teaches you what you need to know to fight fires, to escape aircrafts that ditched helicopters, first aid, sea survival, and all of these things. And then we took you into a practical session where you took all of the theory that you knew, that you were taught, and the recommendations, the recommended responses, and you put it into a practical activity. I knew from 9 years, almost 9 years of that, that if your practical experience is off, then your theory is bad. Your theory is garbage. And so because of that principle, I actually isolated, but was able to take that principle and apply it to the Bible. And this is how the International Institute of Pneumatology was eventually born. Because what I did was take the scriptures and look for a practical way of interpreting the scriptures using my knowledge of the science of translation, and then put in an experimental process to it to be able to identify if the theory that we're holding on to is even true. Now, the rest is history, but I'm saying all of that to get to this point. There is one valuable lesson that I learned in this entire process that I think is very useful, not only for men who are believers in Christ, but also men in general. One of the most valuable lessons that I learned is every mindset is built or is an expression of something or some person that you have been taught is a life priority. If you have been taught that providing and protecting is your priority in life, is what you are to do to be valued as a man, your entire mindset is all an expression of that priority. If you come from a circle where money, you are taught that if you don't have money, you're not a man, your entire mindset is based on being valued as a man by having money. And your entire life, you do not know that unknowingly you have structured your entire life around getting money so that you could be valued. If career is what you were taught, academic accomplishment, which is education, is what you were taught, that you need to be a man, you have structured an entire life. You are living right now a routine that you have built unknowingly, where that one thing is the most important thing. And you have been using that as the reference point for everything that you are deciding in your life. And when you begin to acquire what you need to be valued, you feel strong. You feel like you should be respected. It could even lead to a sense of arrogance, as well as a sense of condescension to others who do not have what you have not acquired what you've acquired. And you could very easily fall into treating them as though they are garbage or they need to do better with their lives. you can easily find yourself judging them and pretty much, if not directly, but indirectly communicating to them and telling them that they will become a man when they get this. You may not be intentionally doing it, but you're doing it in some form or fashion. And when you don't get what you've been taught that you need to find that value, you yourself fall into what society call mental health issues. That means that if you were taught that providing and protecting is what you need to do to be valued as a man and to qualify to be loved, when you don't have providing, when you cannot provide and protect, you don't have what is necessary to do that, you feel as though you are dying mentally. Is this making sense to anybody? And therefore, I just want to put this out. If this is what you're experiencing, or you know somebody who's experiencing this is why most men fall back on vices. Most of the times, your vices, or the vices that you take up, are a distraction from the sense of insufficiency because of what you were taught that you need to have to be categorized as a man, or to be valued as a man, or to qualify to be loved by family or even by a woman. So you fall into depression and sadness, anxiety, fear, a sense of insufficiency, inadequacy. You feel like you're not a man. And all of this is based on what you have been taught is the priority for you. If you understand what I just said, then what's the biggest epiphany that I've had through all our research and through the lens of the ancients' understanding of what took place in the garden? What took place in the garden is that man was supposed to use his spirit as his priority, the definition of his name, to tell him what he's supposed to do. And the realm, the garden realm that was breathed into him, into his mind and heart, as the point of comparison, to be able to know what to do and what to establish on it. The ancients teach that when man switched from using his own spirit and was tricked by the serpent to use an external source of validation, he began to use a tree to determine his value, to have his wisdom. And this is what they teach has resulted in all of the chaos on the earth. And if you are feeling like you are experiencing any mental health issues as a result, if you're experiencing that, it is as a result of what you were taught is the priority for you to be accepted. And the one lesson that I learned is that all you need to do is to change your priority. And what does it mean to change your priority? It basically means, instead of actually understanding that this is what, by the way, the answer to this question is what the gospel message is about. But unfortunately, the gospel message changed over time. It changed to be accept Jesus to escape hell, when the gospel message was always to come back to seeing life in you, which is Christ in you, because you have been taught by society, family, or even the social construct that there are things that you are only valuable based on an external priority. An external priority is something that you see outside of you that you need to do to be considered a man. The gospel message was originally designed to solve that conundrum, to solve that problem, and to teach you that you should not be valued by anything outside of you. You should be valued by your spirit and what your spirit represents. And when that became clear within that 8 to 9 year period of research, when that became clear, I truly understood what it meant to change a life priority and to make something else that which is important. That liberated me immediately from mental health issues. The gospel message is that you should stop using things like provision and protecting as the priority to be called a man, and use your spirit, the name of your spirit, and what your spirit is designed to do to be your value as a man. And once that became clear, then I understood with that, what you basically need is to find the definition that God gave you as a man, which is in the scriptures, by the way. It's communicated in the scriptures. What is the definition? What is the name he gave you? And what definition does that name carry? And that is where you get liberation from the society, the family, and the social construct that has actually assumed the responsibility to tell you what you need to do as a man to be valued as a man. And because everybody has a spirit, it liberates all men from all mental health issues, because you're no longer using anything outside. As you were told, you're using the name that God gave your spirit and the definition of that name to know how to solve every problem that actually comes up in front of you, and how to understand everything in front of you. That was the biggest epiphany that I found, and that liberated me, because the scripture says that the Holy Spirit has been given to you eternally. It will never be the Holy Spirit will never be taken from you. Naturally, you cannot lose that. You can lose your ability to provide and protect, but you cannot lose the spirit and the name that was given to that spirit and the definition of that name. You cannot lose it. And through that, what that further actually teaches, what it further teaches is that with that should become the reason for you providing. The name, the definition of the name that defines what you are designed by God to do, that is what defines. That now becomes the reason to actually provide, to actually create. It makes you a creator. And therefore, you are no longer pursuing something for an identity. It places you in a position where you are now functioning from identity. And therefore, you are creating because this is your identity. Because of this, that has actually put me in a position where I am now at peace. The definitions given by society, the priorities taught by the social construct is of no consequence to me anymore. I now live in a space where I am at peace, and that which I need, I create. And if I don't know how to create it, then all I need to do is to find a template to be able to create it. What does the template of creation look like? Instead of pursuing a source. And whilst you're pursuing, as we have been taught in society, you're technically pursuing to be able to recover your identity or to recover your value. What the gospel message teaches you, what the name teaches you, is that you have been given this name and this definition, and this definition and name now gives you a start as to how to see things and what you need to do to be able to use what is inherent in you to be able to become a creator. So now you create what you need. And that means that the society can no longer define you. Because most of us have actually found ourselves struggling under the societal norms, under the social construct, and under the validation of family. When I say validation, what they are using to judge you as valuable or more valuable than others, or to qualify you to be loved. The only reason that we found ourselves there is because we were not taught definitions of those things, definition for your identity when we started. And if you don't have a definition, you begin to depend or allow yourself to be defined by external sources, by societal norms, by other people, by your potential spouses, or your significant other, by your career, by things and people, instead of being free from it. You're depending on it to approve whether you are a man or not. And so the second thing that this comes with is understanding what is the definition of a man from the spirit that you have. And once you have that definition, you'll find that you have no need anymore to value the opinions of the external constructs. So if you consider this, you will be free. That means that your life needs to be redefined, and your life in general now needs to revolve around the new priority, which is your spirit and the name of your spirit, definition of that spirit, and the definition of what a man is based on the spirit. Once you have that, you will lose interest and any value that you may have given to the external constructs that you use as guidance. They will fall off like dry leaves. Because now the definition tells you what you are. Nobody could take the spirit from you. And you are now a creator, inherently a creator. And all you need, where there is a lack of understanding as to how to create, is to find a template to create what you need. This basically is what set me free from the validation of others, the validation of family, the validation of, or the approval, or the judgment of value or lack of value from family, from society, from the social construct, even from denominations, religious denominations. You will lose the interest in it because the definition is what will guide you. So if you are listening to this and you know anyone who may be falling in the category of mental health issues, I encourage you to share this. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post it in the comment section for our replay viewers, for those of you here right now and our replay viewers. And I'm also thinking about creating a society, a space, a group that could actually be dedicated to men's mental health for both believers and unbelievers. If you're a believer and you would like Bible based guidance, we can provide you with that. And if you're an unbeliever, you're not interested in the Bible, then at least trust the principles that we share with you. The principle of changing your priority, redefining what your priority is, and redefining what you are by your spirit, the definition given to that, and redefining what it means to be a man from that as a priority. And you will not ever feel or experience being gripped by the clutches of others and their opinions and their definitions. If you don't have definitions, by default, you will permit the definitions of others to judge you. Once you have definitions, you'd realize that they are not qualified to judge you. This is for believers as well as unbelievers. So we are also we are considering opening a community for the mental health of men. And if you think that this community is something that you will value, a community that you think that will help you, that provides you with not only principles, but that provides you with a framework to apply these principles and provides you with a community of support whilst you are making the transition of changing from one priority to the next and redefining who you are and what you are. If you're interested in a community that provides a support network where you can connect with other men that are in the process of this redefinition, as well as have redefined themselves, please let it be known in the comment section. Like this video, share it, and post "I want community" if you're interested in a community, and we will start a community where we can actually lock arms, as one of our master mentors at the Institute says, and help you to redefine what you need to be to redefine and bring change. Change is not a product of affirmations, even though this is a common thought in our culture. Change is the product of redefinition. Redefine your identity and you will see change. Redefine what it means to be a man and you will see change. Right? And this not only will be change with regards to your identity and to your experience, but also you also have a redefinition of criteria that you're looking for spouses, as well as how you interface with your spouse. Everything will change. Change is the product of redefinition. So, my name is Zane, and I am the headmaster mentor of the International Institute of Pneumatology, as well as Anointed Life Mentorship International. If you would like to get in contact with us, feel free to join our Facebook community, Anointed Life Mentorship International. And when you join the community, if you've joined the community based on this video, when you join the community, make a post in the community, hashtag MMH, Men's Mental Health, hashtag MMH, so that I will know that you are there for the to join this new community. All right? For now, until next time, remember, change is the product of redefinition, and you should allow no one to define you. You should do that on your own and be able to establish your principle and the parameters of this new definition and live in peace, in integrity to definitions. See you soon. Blessings Peace and much love.